I have here the toxicology report, which shows there are a staggering 9 different prescription drugs in Elvis's body at the time of his death.
Elvis Presley is practically a mythic figure in pop culture, and as such, legends and lore surround both his life and his death. The circumstances of Presley's untimely death in 1977, at just 42 years of age.
What if everything you thought you knew about Elvis Presley's final days was a lie? The king of rock and roll, who seemed to have it all, fame, fortune, and fans, was actually dealing with a whole lot more behind the scenes. His health was falling apart, his relationships were crumbling, and there were secrets, big ones, that he probably didn't want anyone to know. So what really happened in those last days? And why are so many details still locked away? The mysterious passing of Elvis Presley. When you think of Elvis Presley, you think of the king of rock and roll, the man who changed music, drove crowds wild, and made history. But his story ended shockingly and mysteriously on August 16, 1977, at just 42. Nearly 50 years later, people still wonder, what really happened to Elvis Presley? That hot August afternoon, his girlfriend, Ginger Alden, found him lying unconscious on the bathroom floor of his legendary Memphis mansion, Graceland. He was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. By 3:30 p.m., Elvis was gone. The official story? Heart failure. But was that all? Did the king's heart really just give out? Or was there more going on behind the scenes? Elvis had struggled with his health, and like many stars of his era, relied heavily on prescription drugs. Reports revealed he was taking a dangerous mix, opiates, barbiturates, and sedatives that could spell disaster for anyone. When the toxicology report came back weeks later, it showed a mix of powerful drugs, including Dilaudid, Percodan, Demerol, Quaaludes, and codeine. That's when the story took a dark turn. Then came the spotlight on his doctor, Dr. George Nick Nicopolis, or Dr. Nick, who had been treating Elvis since 1967. In the last 20 months of Elvis's life, Dr. Nick allegedly prescribed over 12,000 pills, saying they were for Elvis and his entourage. But 12,000 pills for a single man? The numbers raise serious questions. Despite everything, Elvis's family tried to keep his private struggles just that, private. They requested an autopsy, but Tennessee's chief medical examiner, Dr. Jerry Francisco, made a quick announcement. Elvis had died of heart disease, nothing more. He blamed cardiac arrhythmia, or an irregular heartbeat, pointing to the fact that Elvis's mother had died young of heart issues too. But other pathologists weren't convinced and believed drugs had played a major role. And because the autopsy was requested by the family, the report was sealed, and it still is to this day. The secrecy only deepened the mystery. 2 weeks before his death, a book called Elvis, What Happened, came out. It was packed with stories from 3 of Elvis's former bodyguards who detailed his drug use and chaotic lifestyle. At first, it got little attention, but after his death, people started to connect the dots, and the book flew off shelves. For years, the Presley family had managed to keep these darker details hidden, but that was about to change. In the fall of 1977, the Shelby County Coroner's Office confirmed heart disease as the cause, with hypertension as a contributing factor. But toxicology reports painted a different picture. They suggested that Elvis's cocktail of drugs, now recognized as polypharmacy, or the dangerous combination of multiple drugs, was likely what led to his tragic end. Some reports even described how he had taken so many depressants that he probably passed out and couldn't breathe due to his slumped position. Today, most experts agree that Elvis's health issues and his dangerous drug use together caused his tragic and early death. It's a haunting end for a man who had broken records, topped the charts, and changed the music scene forever. Elvis was the king of rock and roll, with over 100 Billboard hits, 129 charted albums, and a cultural impact so strong that composer Leonard Bernstein once said, Elvis Presley is the greatest cultural force in the 20th century. Elvis's final years were a whirlwind of personal struggles, health problems, and increasing isolation. When news of his sudden death hit, it didn't just leave the world heartbroken, it opened the door to a flood of rumors and conspiracy theories. But did the conspiracy theories fumble over time? Absolutely not. In fact, they have become wilder over the years. So what really happened that night in Graceland? Did Elvis Presley really die? The Elvis death conspiracy explained. At the time of Elvis Presley's death, many believed it signaled the end of an era. His passing on August 16, 1977, marked the loss of a music icon, and fans worldwide mourned the end of a legendary career. But what if the end wasn't the end at all? Over the years, the mythology surrounding Elvis has only grown. New stories and revelations about his personal life, along with constant reinterpretations of his cultural impact, have kept his legacy alive in ways that no one could have predicted. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, died of heart failure about over 40 years ago. His sudden death shocked the music world and left millions of fans devastated. Could this all just be part of a bigger mystery? However, in the days following his funeral, a strange and persistent theory began to take hold. What if Elvis didn't die at all? Despite official reports from doctors and coroners confirming his death, a small but vocal group of believers clung to the idea that the legendary performer had faked his death and gone into hiding. Over the last 4 decades, the rumors have continued to spread. Fans across North America claim to have seen Elvis in various places, even decades after his supposed death. In 1989, 3 Elvis enthusiasts formed the Elvis Sighting Society to track and investigate these alleged sightings. Some even insisted that Elvis appeared as an extra in the 1990 hit film Home Alone. It wasn't just a few casual fans, it became an entire movement. Elvis isn't the first celebrity to spark such enduring conspiracy theories. From James Dean, who died in a car crash in 1955, to Michael Jackson's drug-related death in 2009, many fans refuse to believe that their favorite stars are truly gone, instead insisting that they are living incognito, out of the public eye. One of the most widely circulated theories about Elvis's death centers on the idea that he had to fake his own death to escape a dangerous situation involving the mafia. In 1988, author Gail Brewer Giorgio published the best-selling book Is Elvis Alive?, which argued that Elvis had been recruited by the FBI to infiltrate a criminal organization called the Fraternity. According to Brewer Giorgio, Presley volunteered for the mission because of his deep respect for America and his admiration for the FBI. She claims that the agency enlisted him after discovering that one of the members of the mafia had dealings with Presley over the sale of an airplane. In Brewer Giorgio's telling, Presley became an undercover agent in 1976, but when his cover was blown, he was placed in the Witness Protection Program. Elvis faked his death because he was going to be killed, and there was no doubt about it, she said in a recent interview with Time. Despite her insistence on the validity of her claims, the FBI has never corroborated this story. The agency has not released any documents to suggest that Elvis helped with any investigations or was involved with witness protection. The FBI files related to Presley, totaling over 760 documents, do show that he was targeted by extortionists and had a deep admiration for the agency. Presley even toured FBI headquarters in 1971 and expressed his willingness to assist the Bureau in any way. However, there is no evidence in these files that suggests Presley faked his death or that he was ever involved in anything remotely connected to witness protection. Patrick Lacey, an Elvis researcher and author of Elvis Decoded, has spent years debunking the various theories about Presley's death. He argues that the overwhelming evidence points to the singer's death in 1977. The medical evidence, the eyewitness reports, all of it confirms that he died, Lacey said. To believe he faked his death would require the silence of hundreds, if not thousands of people over the years. It's simply not feasible. Besides the supposed sightings of Elvis, conspiracy theorists also point to alleged slip-ups made by Presley's family members as proof of the cover-up. They claim that the spelling of Presley's middle name on his tombstone, Aaron instead of Aaron, was deliberately altered to avoid revealing his true identity if he were still alive. However, experts argue that Elvis himself began using the Aaron spelling later in his life, debunking this theory. In 2005, Priscilla Presley appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show, where she discussed how Elvis spoiled their daughter, Lisa Marie. Skeptics seized on a brief moment in the interview where Priscilla seemed to say, "It's exactly what he said the other day," before quickly correcting herself to, "You said." Similarly, they point to an interview in 2003 when Lisa Marie Presley allegedly dodged a question from Larry King about whether she felt any communication with her late father. These supposed slips have fueled the conspiracy theories further. However, for many fans like Lacey, these claims only cause unnecessary pain for Elvis's family. "I didn't just get into this because I've got nothing better to do," he said. "I believe the people who say Elvis is alive are doing a great disservice to him and his family." Imagine being in Priscilla's shoes and hearing people say your husband faked his death, that he was deceiving his fans. It's heartbreaking. In fact, most Americans remain convinced that Elvis Presley truly died in 1977. A Gallup poll conducted in 1997 found that just 4% of Americans believed he was still alive, while 93% were certain he had passed. Yet Brewer, Georgia remains adamant in her belief that Presley's death was faked. "I know what he really did," she said. "The world needs to know that Elvis Presley put his life on the line." I think it's sad that we don't know the whole Elvis. In the end, the question of whether Elvis is still alive remains a matter of belief for some, but for many others, the myth will always be part of his legacy. The facts, though, point to a tragic loss in 1977, and the ongoing myths surrounding his death only continue to obscure the reality of his incredible legacy. While Elvis's death has always been surrounded by mystery, sparking rumors and curiosity for years, it's his life that really stole the show, packed with epic performances, unforgettable style, and a lifestyle that was pure glamour. We're now with Baz Luhrmann's Elvis biopic starring Austin Butler. His story is back in the spotlight, and while the mystery of his death still lingers, it's his legendary life that keeps everyone hooked and wanting more. The King's Tale told in flash and fire. Elvis Presley, aside from maybe the Beatles, is the most iconic figure in music history. That gives any filmmaker a chance to create an unforgettable biopic. But it's also a monumental challenge. With Elvis, everything, the rise, the fall, the entire spectacle, is etched in our collective memory. So when you make a film about him, you're not just telling a story, you're competing with a legend. The big question is, what can you bring that's bigger, bolder, and even more captivating than the real Elvis? Baz Luhrmann's Elvis is just that, a wild, dazzling 2-hour and 39-minute ride that takes the King's epic life and transforms it into a theatrical pop opera. Luhrmann, known for his glitzy, heart-pounding style in Moulin Rouge, isn't about to deliver a classic biopic, and really, who would want him to? He skips the mundane, flying from one high point to another, blending music, color, and emotion to make us feel Elvis's electrifying presence and his music's deep connection to Black gospel and blues. Luhrmann's movie is packed with high-energy moments, but it's still a strange one. It's compelling, chaotic, and sometimes feels more like a spectacular tribute than a deeply personal look at the King's soul. Austin Butler, who plays Elvis, brings a lot of the look, the bedroom eyes, those unmistakable moves. He captures the swagger, the sultry Southern accent, and he dances like a live wire. But he still feels a bit more like a young John Travolta than the Elvis of our imaginations. Why? Elvis had this hypnotic charm, a come-hither smile with just a hint of danger. But here's the catch. Butler, though captivating, doesn't quite bring that hound dog magnetism we think of as Elvis. Luhrmann starts with a bang, kicking off the film with a bedazzled Warner Brothers logo and a split-screen sequence showing Elvis's larger-than-life image as the Vegas showman. The goal is clear, to capture Elvis's story with glitz and no apologies for its extravagance. But Butler's Elvis, as good as he is, lacks the unpredictability of the real Elvis, which brings out a slight flaw in the film's approach. Luhrmann tries to show Elvis as a force that shook up society, a sexy rebel challenging racial lines and shattering conventions with his moves, his style, and his music. Yet that's the irony. We now live in a world reshaped by Elvis, making it almost impossible to feel just how radical he truly was. There's a lot to admire in Luhrmann's portrayal of Elvis's inspirations. The gospel revivals he sneaks into as a child, the way he channels blues legend Arthur Big Boy Crudup. These moments show how Elvis, often accused of stealing the blues, was instead a unique mix, adding a layer of pop and a white boy flashiness to create his own sound. It's thrilling when we see Elvis in his glory, but for a director known for over-the-top flair, Luhrmann surprisingly doesn't deliver enough of those mind-blowing musical moments. The story is mostly told from the perspective of Elvis's controversial manager, Colonel Tom Parker, played by Tom Hanks with an exaggerated accent, tons of padding, and a sleazy gleam in his eye. Parker frames himself as the misunderstood genius who made Elvis a star, but in Hanks's portrayal, he comes off more as a circus ringmaster, a sneaky showman out to keep Elvis on a short leash for his own gain. He manipulates Elvis's career at every turn, almost like a puppeteer, but oddly enough, we never get a truly in-depth dramatic exchange between them. And for a love story, the connection between Elvis and Priscilla, played by Olivia de Jong, is skimmed over rather than deeply explored. What's even more surprising is how Luhrmann fast-forwards through Elvis's 1960s, brushing over an entire decade of movies and hits in one brief sequence. It's clear that he did not make a standard biopic. The story jumps ahead to Elvis's 1968 comeback special, focusing on how he reclaims his rebellious edge. This should feel triumphant, but Luhrmann's handling of this pivotal moment feels more like an easy win than a hard-fought victory. But then we get to the film's powerhouse second half, set during Elvis's 5-year residency in Las Vegas. Many people laugh off this era as Elvis in his Vegas jumpsuit phase, but Luhrmann brings a new perspective, showing how the international hotel shows were not just glitzy, they were groundbreaking. It was here in these glittering shows that Elvis gave some of his best vocal performances. But as the movie shows, these years were also a gilded cage. Parker locked him into a brutal contract, driven by his own gambling debts, and Elvis was stuck, becoming more dependent on drugs to cope. As we watch Elvis crumble under this suffocating arrangement, Butler's performance truly shines. And here's the twist. Suddenly, he's not just playing Elvis. He is Elvis, the broken man who gave his soul on stage while losing himself behind it. The movie takes us through all the wild moments of Elvis's life, but even with all the glitz and drama, it's impossible to forget the sheer power of his story. After all, how do you make a legend like Elvis feel fresh when his rise and fall are already etched in history? The answer is in the music, the madness, and the man behind the persona. As we shift from Luhrmann's bold vision to Elvis's true legacy, we're reminded that the King's impact stretches far beyond his time on stage. What legacy did Elvis leave behind? Elvis Presley burst onto the scene in the mid-1950s, forever changing rock and roll and earning his title as the King. With his electrifying voice and presence, he wasn't just making music. He was building a legacy that would reach fans for generations. Even after his death in 1977, Elvis's magic hasn't faded. His impact is constantly revived by family, fans, and a world of admirers. But what keeps his legacy alive year after year? From biopics that capture his rocket-like rise to fame to endless cover versions of his hits, Elvis's influence keeps echoing through time. On the 25th anniversary of his passing, his daughter Lisa Marie shared a heartfelt tribute that gave fans a rare glimpse into their bond. "I haven't forgotten," she said. "You made me. I love you." Her words, recorded in 2002, revealed the depth of their connection and the love she'll always carry for her father. In August 2022, Priscilla Presley honored Elvis on the 45th anniversary of his death, opening up about her mission to carry out his dreams. "Anything he wanted to do or wished to do in life, I want to try to make happen," she explained, emphasizing the responsibility she feels to keep his spirit alive. And the devotion doesn't end there. Each August 15th, Graceland hosts a candlelight vigil, drawing tens of thousands of fans who gather to remember him. The event, streamed live, unites people from around the world. To see how many still come to see Elvis is unbelievable, Priscilla told Today. In 2022, Elvis's life was brought to the big screen again, this time in Baz Luhrmann's film Elvis, starring Austin Butler as the King himself. The movie didn't just resonate with audiences. It earned 8 Oscar nominations, including nods for Best Picture and Best Actor for Butler. But even more powerful than the awards was the family's reaction. Elvis's daughter, Priscilla, Lisa Marie, and his granddaughter, Riley Keough, were all deeply moved by Butler's performance. Reflecting on this, Butler said he felt an enormous responsibility to honor Elvis's legacy, making their approval the ultimate compliment. Elvis's death was a world-shaking event. In 1977, a crowd of 25,000 fans, family, and friends flooded Graceland, all hoping to pay their final respects to the King. In 2018, Priscilla reflected on that day, sharing a few words about her last goodbye, a moment that marked the end of an era, but not the end of Elvis's story. "I was still shocked. It was just too hard to believe," she said. And going out the gates in the limo and seeing the streets lined up on both sides all the way to the cemetery. You'd see glimpses, you'd see people crying, hysterical, fainting, and that's how impactful it was, and still to this day. People come around the same time and they're all there. Elvis's legacy lives on through his music, his unmatched charisma, and the lasting love from his family and fans. His story, though marked by a tragic end, continues to inspire and bring people together, proving that, for the king, the music never stops. So what is your take on this? Do you also believe that Elvis didn't really die? If yes, what are your theories about what happened to him? Drop your ideas in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more exciting stories. Thanks for watching.